Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Cologne. For those of you who didn't join us yesterday, a warm welcome to the third part of our General Aviation season opener. We'll do a quick introduction of those of us that are here, because for this Airworthiness and Maintenance session, it's potentially likely we've got new people who weren't with us yesterday. So my name's John Franklin, and I'm Head of Safety Promotion here at EASA. And one of the things that we're really keen to get across during this season opener is that often we get the impression, certainly when we read forums and other things, that people think that often here at EASA we're kind of bureaucrats and people who push pieces of paper around, and that we don't necessarily have aviation knowledge and experience. So we also want to give you a bit of a flavour of our own backgrounds and our own passion, particularly for general aviation and aviation in general. So from my side, I started hot air ballooning at the age of 8 and spent a long time through my life being involved in ballooning. I joined the Air Force in the UK when I was 17 years old, and was then an aircraft technician and a maintenance manager in the Air Force for many, many years before I joined EASA. So for me, aviation's something that I've been involved in since I was really small, and I've loved it all my life. So hopefully what you'll see throughout all of these sessions is the passion for aviation from all of us here at EASA. So for this first part of the session, I'm joined by two of my colleagues, and I'll get them to introduce themselves now. So first of all, Dominique, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, John. I'm pleased to repeat the introduction for those who could not attend yesterday. I will not repeat exactly the same introduction. Today I will be with you, John, and Janus, just to tell you that I'm working a lot with Janus. And I'm spending a lot of time with a colleague from the GA team, and when we are talking together, I can tell you the conversation is looking exactly as it would be in a flying club, in an association. We feel the same passion, the same spirit, GA spirit here. I'm coming from the community, from the industry, so-called industry, knowing that there is no big industry in GA. I started as a glider pilot, 15 years old, like many of you, and then I was a flight instructor, and then I could work for a company designing, building airplane, Aviation, so aerobatics airplane. I did most of my careers flying aerobatic airplane, testing aerobatic airplane, flying competition, a lot of competition. I moved to Avion Robin, Avion Robin in Dijon. I learned many things there as well. And finally at 48, I moved, so in 2005, I moved to EASA, where I did a lot of different jobs. I learned a lot here as well. And I discovered that a lot of colleagues at EASA were like me. They were working for EASA because they are just patient. So today I'm the champion for the GA roadmap project. I'm also head of the Policy, Innovation and Knowledge Department. I'm still doing flight testing for some project. So I believe we are like you. We are part of the same community. We have different roles and responsibilities, but we are trying to do our best to improve the situation of GA in Europe.
Thanks, Dominique. And now a great time to ask my colleague Janus to introduce himself. Janus.
Thank you, John. Good morning. My name is Janus Neumann. I work at EASA in the Certification Directorate in the General Aviation Department as a project manager for the type certification of small aircraft. But I'm also a glider pilot. Actually, when I was a teenager, I was desperately waiting for the day I turned 14, so I could start my training on gliders, and a couple of weeks later, I had my first solo, and since then I'm spending half of my life on gliding sites. I became a flight instructor. I spent a lot of time in the student flying groups at the university, and based on all that experience, I'm today also a certification pilot for sailplanes here at EASA.
Fantastic, thanks, Janus. And as you say, as I said at the start, hopefully you get the feeling for everybody's love for aviation, as well as our general passion for all the technical work that we do here in the teams at EASA. A few kind of general housekeeping things before we really get going. So the first thing is in terms of question and answers and things like that. So if you were here yesterday, you hopefully got the same message as today. So we have this Slido system that you can hopefully see on the screen, the information on how to connect. So you connect to Slido and then you use hashtag GA2021. Hopefully it's on the bottom of the screen here for you to see. So that's how you can ask questions. Unfortunately, we won't have the time to answer all of the questions that we've got. But please don't let that stop you adding your questions. We'll do what we can. I'll be moderating the questions as we go through. So please bear with us during the sessions. We'll have a question and answer session at the end, and the things that we can't answer, one of the other challenges we have is just because of the logistics of the social distancing, it's not so easy to get all of the experts that we might need to answer all of the questions in one place. So there's a lot of the questions that we'll have to take away and we'll provide updates. And particularly, actually, that's a good time to mention our GA community site. If you haven't found it before, so if you type into Google, even EASA GA community, or it's easy to find. You can log in and get an account with LinkedIn or Facebook or the usual things like that. And then you can make posts and ask questions and things. But that's where we'll provide all of the information and all of the follow-up material from these sessions. You'll also be able to find all of the main material ultimately also on the event webpage on the main EASA website. But we would particularly encourage you to use the GA community site, as a place to engage with us and work with us, etc. So that's really, really good. The other thing to say, as I say, we get quite a lot of questions throughout the sessions yesterday. We will be recording all of these and posting them online afterwards. So just to mention that as well. Now, before we really get into the maintenance side, maybe just to mention something. We were talking yesterday particularly about being prepared, and ironically, I was sent a picture by a friend of mine fairly late last night, and here's a great example. This is a friend who's a 787 pilot. He hasn't flown very much, and he set this up in his spare bedroom, a mock-up cockpit for no other, mainly so he can remember where all the switches are and run through procedures and things like that. And it kind of highlights that it doesn't matter, what aircraft you fly. There's lots of places on the internet where you can get these kinds of images, or you can even just take photographs in the cockpit of your own aircraft, make copies, and use it to help remember where things are and kind of get back into kind of the mental process of doing things. And Dominique was talking yesterday about how he's been using flight simulators and things like that on computers in order to refresh himself on procedures and all those kinds of things. So hopefully you found those sessions yesterday really helpful. And today we're here particularly to focus on the subjects of airworthiness and maintenance. And certainly, when we look through the accident statistics we do during our analysis processes, we still see a number of accidents due to various types of technical failures, which continue to highlight the importance of this topic. So maybe if I can start with you, Dominique, what are your key topics in this area? What are the things people should really think about?
Well, first of all, talking about maintenance, and when we started to work on this issue many years ago, in 2014-15, just to explain to the audience, to our colleagues, that the feedback that we receive, and which is triggering the action we are taking, is not only the official one, the official stream channel that we have through the advisory body created by the agency, but also the feedback received by a colleague like Yannis. All the time he's spending in the flying club. The feedback I get from the maintenance organization I know, and all our network of GA colleagues are also feeding our thought with a lot of information. And we knew upfront that the situation in Europe was not very good, and that our system was not really fit for the purpose. That we had this tendency in the past when the EASA was created to think that one size could fit all, which is not true. and we know now that it cannot work. We need a much simpler system, and this is what we have tried to achieve together with you, because when the task was created, we decided to create a task force so that we could bring on board colleagues from the community and to help us to redefine what could be a better framework for the maintenance of light aircraft. I can tell you that I'm especially interested because I'm the co-owner of a small aircraft, and when I see the complexity of the system that we had before, the overall cost for the maintenance of a small aircraft, it's tremendous. I mean, when I see the invoices, how is it possible that it's so expensive to maintain a small aircraft, which is basically a machine which is much more simple than a car. When you see a modern car with all the electronics, the sophisticated features, and when you see a basic GA aircraft today, you say, well, how is it possible that it is so expensive to do maintenance on a small aircraft like that? So we said, no, we need to do something. At least we did our best effort. I don't know if we succeeded at the end, and we will know after many years of implementation of the new system, but at least we did our best effort to improve. Now, maintenance in terms of safety is a key aspect that we cannot ignore. So we need to keep the system as safe as possible. I mean, when I'm flying overseas or at night with my TB20, I start to listen to the engine noise. I say, okay, is it? I always feel that the noise is different when I'm flying overseas for some reason. And then you have to trust your mechanic and say, okay, I'm sure that he has done a good job, because I don't want to lose my engine over the sea or lose my engine over the mountain. Like yesterday, you have seen the crash broadcasted by Andreas. When you fly over the mountains, you have no plan B. If you lose the engine, you're dead. So you need to trust your maintenance specialist. So this is why we'll talk today about Part 66 and so on. So yes, it's expensive, but at the end of the day, you have only one life. So we have to balance things, and I believe this is what we have tried to achieve with the new regulation.
Thanks, Dominique, and maybe I can turn to Yanis. You've been heavily involved in the work. Can you say a few words about your thoughts on the subject?
Yes, actually the key word is balancing. And when we were in the working group, it's a couple of years ago already in the meantime, we had representatives from all areas, authorities, maintenance organizations, aero clubs, pilots, and all our discussions were always, if we remove something here, if we move more responsibility to the other side, do we need to balance that? Is the outcome of it at an appropriate level of safety?
And I think that's one of the key things, isn't it? And hopefully it will come, as you'll see over the course of this morning. We've got various interviews, we've got various discussions with different people about all these different aspects, and I think that word balance, I think, is a key part of this whole discussion. Is that there are I mean, it's kind of similar to what you were saying. We were talking about yesterday with regards to the instrument rating. Is that it was a similar kind of balance, wasn't it? Is that it's whether does a GA pilot need the same level of experience as and all the training that you have for a full instrument rating, and similarly when you're maintaining perhaps a simpler aircraft, does that how do we make that balance that you were talking about? I think, and perhaps now's the right time to get some experiences from people involved at the front line of training and working with the new regulations that we've been talking about. And I've got a few questions that we pose now to Clement Dufix from OSAC. And my first question, hopefully Clement will be able to follow with each of the questions. So the first question we put to Clement is, having been involved now in the development, how was your involvement and what were the main features of Part M Lite?
Hi everyone, thank you for giving us the opportunity to participate to this event. I'm Clement and I'm currently at the head of the Safety and Regulation Department within OSAC Methods and Development Directorate. OSAC is special. On the one hand, it's a private company, subsidiary of the APAF Group. On the other hand, we are authorized by ministerial decree since 2010 to oversee the initial and continuing airworthiness of French civil aviation. As part of the authority, OSAC issues, oversees, suspends, or withdraws approval for training, production, maintenance, and continuing airworthiness management organizations. We also issue airworthiness documents for aircraft and aviation mechanics licenses. Let me give you some figures to illustrate our activity. We got around 12,000 aircraft registered in France. 12,000 aeronautical mechanics licenses have been issued. 950 organizations are under our oversight. 560 technical documents are written and available on OSAC's website. In 2019, OSAC's Methods and Developments Department devoted much of their time to taking on board the new EU regulation in the area of maintenance and continuing airworthiness management, adopted on the 20th February 2019. It particularly concerns the update of Part M and introduction of Parts M Lite, KO and Camo. Before this work, only some of the 36 comments fed back by France to EASA had been integrated into the text voted in February 2019. Of which 12 were considered as serious obstacles. The French authority wrote a document summarizing the sticking points for implementing the voted text, in particular regarding the methods of transition to the new regulatory structure. And so, we proposed some corrective actions. 2 options concerning the transition methods were sent to EASA and the European Commission. Afterwards, guidance material was prepared to describe the proposed transition methods. Some of this material was picked up by EASA and published through the Guide for Transition to Part KO and Part Camo, now available on EASA website. All these evolutions led to the modification of the new regulation, which was voted by the Member States in January 2020 via a written procedure.
Fantastic. Thanks for that really comprehensive answer, Clément. And for the next question, obviously you've been heavily involved in lots of different aspects of this. So how are you helping stakeholders to implement Part M Lite? Maybe you could tell us a bit about that.
To start with, we produce documentation for the public. Guides, procedures, information bulletins, regulatory news flashes and explanatory leaflets diffused via our website and social media posts. Our dedicated training departments created a MOOC, massive open online course about the new regulation, with a module exclusively dedicated to Part M Lite available on our website. It is free for French approval and license holders. OSAC's MOOC has attracted much interest, with around 700 connections as of April 2021. Since then, we have decided to develop extra MOOC modules to answer recurring questions arising from the regulation. OSAC's method experts were interviewed for articles in specialist aeronautical magazines and intervened at OSAC and HAPAF stands at air shows were not cancelled. On the ground, our inspectors have closely accompanied the users, helping them to put these new regulation requirements in place, especially the small structures. Meetings were also organized for the benefit of user clubs. Finally, OSAC relayed users' requests to EASA to postpone the date of entry into force of the new regulation planned during the first lockdown put in place by the French government against the coronavirus epidemic. A similar approach was taken to ask EASA for the postponement of the anticipated date for the end of the transition period. Lastly, we plan to give you opportunities for user feedback in person as soon as this is permitted to reply to specific questions regarding the regulation's implementation.
Fantastic. Thanks for that really useful and really comprehensive answer, Clément. I think it's one of the great things about the work we do in the general aviation activity, well, in all of our activities, but particularly in general aviation and the work we're all involved in, is that it's so collaborative and we have so many discussions with people from across the industry. So, it's great to get opinions and also to share those kinds of opinions with the wider audience here. So my last question then to you, Clément, is what feedback are you receiving about things already now?
First of all, the regulation entered into force in the middle of the COVID pandemic. This created huge difficulties for us as a competent authority, but also for the users. For example, we've planned to have a huge conference across the country to give information about the new regulation and to transition from the old one to the new one. And that event had first been transformed into an online event and finally completely cancelled due to the pandemic constraints and measures. Secondly, it seems that there is a gap between what was expected in terms of simplification and what we got finally in the voted text. The communication was a lot on simplification, simplification, and simplification again. But on the administrative side, that new regulation is not that simple to implement. And some novelties create confusions and complexity sometimes. For example, with the new part-time Lite, especially in regards to aircraft maintenance programs, the use of airworthiness limitation and the identification of airworthiness limitations by the owner or by the approved organizations developing the maintenance program is now a key, and this responsibility belongs 100% to the owner or to the organizations and no longer to the competent authority. This is new, this is good, but it creates new responsibility, and we need to make sure that the organizations are able to handle those new responsibilities. Another example is the fact that airworthiness reviews become more and more complex to perform by the airworthiness review staff, especially when it comes to deviations introduced by the owner in the aircraft maintenance program, for example. And finally, sometimes it's hard to understand why a given aircraft belongs to Part M Lite and another aircraft which is really similar belongs to Part M Lite. Let's take the example of the Pilatus PC6, for example. As the only criteria retained to make the difference between M and M Lite is the maximum takeoff mass when it comes to an airplane, some PC6 versions are under Part M, others are under Part M Lite, only because there is a difference in regards to the propeller installed. This is sometimes hard to explain and hard to understand for the users. Something else, this is not only true for this regulation, but we all know that the more frequently the regulation is changed, the harder it is on the ground to implement it. We have some of our users that are still working according to the old requirements because they are used to them, and they see that the regulation is changing so frequently that it's hard for them to follow the rhythm and to follow the pace. Finally, regarding the, let's say, difficulties we face, approved organizations, as I said previously, have more and more privilege, which is good, but they need time to accommodate to those new privilege and to understand what are the responsibilities behind those privilege. I took the example of the aircraft maintenance program previously. All right, there is of course positive points, like for example, the fact that we now have a combined approval for continuing airworthiness management and maintenance. This allows the organizations to have only one manual to cover both activities, which is a huge simplification for both the user and the competent authority. The separation of the technical requirements in Part M and Part M Lite to the organizational requirements in Part KO and KMO is also a very interesting and useful simplification.
Fantastic. Thanks for those really useful answers, Clément. And maybe before we respond to some of those questions, maybe just to come to a couple of the Slido things already. So there was a comment from Erling about the OSAT webpage only being in French. Certainly I was on it last week, and there's a an English version as well. So you should be able to switch the languages, and then the material's also available in English, because I know I was looking at it just last week in preparation for this event. Maybe one other thing to say on the Slido is there's a couple of questions already on part 66. So maybe we've got a session on part 66. We'll talk about CS Stan and also part 21 Lite later in the session. So perhaps wait and see if those answer your questions before you start asking other ones. That might be useful. And then also, if you're asking questions on Slido, and there are some where you're more talking to me as the moderator, just watch out for the chat replies, because I will come back to you with a couple of points myself, just to clarify things where we need to. So thanks for that. Maybe, Dominique, maybe you have the chance to respond to some of the things Clément said.
Yes, I believe, thank you to Clément for the interesting contribution. And Clément is raising some question. Of course, we cannot answer them all in the detail immediately, but I can already give some information. First of all, talking about changing the regulation too often. Hey guys, you came to us and you say your regulations are not good for GA. You need to change them. Okay, we do the job. And then after, and it is a comment that I hear very often, oh, you are changing the regulation too often. We are used to the old one and now we have a new one. Hey, yes, we want to improve. They are better, they are simpler, but you need to get used to them. You need to adapt yourself to the new framework. It's a price to pay. Don't forget that you came to us asking for a change. And now, very often I hear the member state or the association complaining that, oh, there is something new coming. Yes, it's for the best. So please, give us credit for the work we have done, because it was further to your request. Then for the weight limit, well, you put a limit somewhere, and then immediately you will trigger marginal problem. Of course, there is no ideal place to draw a line. And we have this problem with many regulations, and we discover inconsistency. Of course, if we take the example of the PC6, it's a, come on, it makes no sense. Yes, but guys, very marginal case. One airplane where we have this problem. Let's address the specific issue on a case-by-case basis, but do not challenge the system because you have a problem at the limit for a marginal case. So we'll try to address it on a case-by-case basis. And finally, on the COVID crisis and the fact that we have postponed implementation of many regulations, yes, we did it, and of course to help everywhere we could, and we do it as well for the part-time Lite, because I believe, and Janus will confirm, the entry into force was planned, the Tactile, and was planned September, yes, and we will postpone to March 2022. Correct?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. The transition period for the CAO and CAMO has been postponed by 6 months, and that new date, March 2022, has been published in the EU's official journal yesterday.
Fantastic. Thanks for that update, Janus. I think that's quite important. And one of the things maybe that's worth mentioning now is that we can, one of the challenges we always have with the GA roadmap, I think, in general, is that it's that balance, isn't it, between people are asking for changes in the system, etc. But then as soon as we do, well, do we get the right change? And I think it's a continually evolving process, isn't it?
Well, and something we can do, and I believe it's part of the lessons learned, and I was discussing maybe with Janus, Janus was leaving the stage, but I believe I still need Janus.
I have to go upstairs now.
Oh, okay, 2 minutes.
We'll have 2 more, we'll manage 2 more minutes maybe, and then we can run up to the roof in a second.
Talking about the part-time Lite and the concept with the part CAO and so on, you know that it was published as an EASA opinion on our website. All the information was available in 2016, 5 years ago. 5 years to prepare yourself to learn about the new system. Unfortunately, the official implementation is starting only after the legislative process. And unfortunately, for this case, the legislative process, the review by the Commission, by the Parliament, and so on, was very long. But at least we should have used this time with the member states, with the NAA, to start the workshop to start, the implementation activities to start prepare the maintenance organization to the new system. We have lost an opportunity, and I believe we will work internally, Janus, we discuss together about it, so that we for future changes to the regulation to promote the start of the implementation of the information awareness training for the user as soon as we have a mature opinion released.
Yeah, what I could think about is that when the rule is published in its opinion and we know what most likely will be the later requirements, that we work with NEAs that volunteer and with organizations that volunteer to simulate the implementation of the upcoming rules, to identify shortcomings in its practical implementation in a very early stage, which gives us the time to adjust the AMC and guidance material.
And maybe that's a useful time to mention the fact that one of the key parts of the second phase of this general aviation roadmap is that we have this communication and promotion and kind of collaborative aspect that does enables us to do much more of these things. It's not it's not necessarily just a case of here's the regulation, you have to get on and work with it. It's managing the implementation, and obviously we want to provide as much support as we can to everybody in the community to help with implementation. And particularly if there are things you think you need to help that, please this is where the comments part of the community site is really great and enables us to kind of do those things. Now, this is the part in the show where we have an interesting logistical problem. Janus has to run up to the roof, so maybe Janus, you can run off and get up to the roof now. So in order to do, one of the challenges we have is in order to do this with the right social distancing, in theory we would normally have needed 4 people on stage for this, so it wasn't quite so easy to do. So what we did instead is we have Janus and our colleague Sasha are up on the roof, and Janus is running up, well not running up, thankfully we have an elevator that works. So Janus is going up in the elevator now, and hopefully, if I time it right, we can go to Sasha on the roof, and Janus will be there to talk some more about Part M Lite. So Sasha, are you up there on the roof? Hopefully Janus has made it now.
Good morning, John. A very warm welcome from EASA's rooftop. We are standing in the sun here, and with me is my colleague Yanis. Yanis, we are both enthusiastic general aviation pilots. It's a leisure activity, a hobby we share, and it happens we both work at EASA. Can you tell us what exactly you're doing at EASA, please?
I work in EASA's General Aviation Department, where we do type certification of small aircraft. But sometimes I'm getting involved in other domains like FCL and maintenance.
So let's talk a little bit about the new maintenance licenses for small aircraft.
When we published Part M in 2003, there was only one set of rules applying to large transport category aircraft and at the same time to very small and light aircraft. The flexibility was provided by the associated AMC material, but that did not turn out to work. And then the Part M was amended several times to come up with all the specific simplifications for the lower end. And that ended up with a really complex regulation, almost unreadable. And what we did recently was to split the whole thing. The Part M remains for the large aircraft, and there's a new Part ML for the lower end.
I see, Yanis. Yes, I remember those early days of the regulations and later on. So now we have a Part ML. So M stands for maintenance, I presume, and L is for light aircraft?
Exactly. That's for light aircraft, and it's in force since February 2020.
February 2020 means it's already it's already applicable for something like a year.
Correct. And in the whole of the EU, or to be precise, in all EASA member states.
Yannis, I keep hearing complaints in the GA community about EASA regulations. People argue they are too sophisticated, too complex, too difficult to read, too costly, too much paperwork, an EASA Form 1 being needed for every nut and bolt. So we may have an issue here, and can you shed some light how this issue holistically was addressed in the new Part ML?
In short, to address all that concerns, we listened and we adjusted.
Okay, now you have me. So can you tell us more, please, about what exactly will change?
We went through the entire maintenance regulation and deleted items, improved items to tailor the entire Part ML to the lower end of general aviation. And there we can work with a lower, or more simple level of less detailed regulation as we would need it for the commercial aviation.
I see that, Yannis. So you speak about the lower end of general aviation. What exactly do you mean with the lower end of general aviation, please?
General aviation is a wide field that includes business jets even. When we talk about the lower end, we mean mainly ELA-1 and ELA-2 aircraft.
ELA-1 and ELA-2. That's another acronym I think we need to explain. What's that all about? ELA-1 and ELA-2, Yannis?
ELA stands for European Light Aircraft, and ELA-1 and 2 covers balloons, hot airships, some of the gas airships, sailplane and powered sailplane, very light rotorcraft, and aeroplane up to 2 tons. But Part ML is pushing the boundary for aeroplanes even higher to 2,730 kilogram MTOM.
That's good news. So it's exactly the category of aircraft the both of us are used to fly.
Exactly. And in particular, your nice Berco Junior, that would be an ELA-1. And ELA-2, it's a little bit more heavy and usually with 4 seats.
Speaking about the new rules for aircraft maintenance, what does it mean? What can I do as being a pilot owner? What's exactly the benefits that we can expect from that?
In a nutshell, you can do much more on your own, but you can also delegate the whole thing as you wish.
That means I have a choice?
Yes. You can either manage the aircraft or the continuing airworthiness of your aircraft on your own, or you delegate to a CAMO or CAO. And there's one exception: unless the aircraft is used in a commercial training organization, the delegation to a CAMO or CAO is a must, and that applies also for flying with passengers beyond the introductory flights.
I see. So as a pilot owner of an ELA-1 or 2 aircraft, do I still need a CAMO then?
No, you don't need a CAMO. You can, as I said, manage the aircraft on your own. Mm-hmm. However, that moves the responsibility to you.
So let's talk about the next topic, the maintenance program. What are changes pertaining to the maintenance program requirements?
You can either self-declare the maintenance program, or you ask an organization to develop it and to approve it.
Okay, let me try and get this right. So when I choose a self-declared maintenance program, I do not need to submit it for approval any longer to my civil aviation authority. Is that correct?
That's correct. You self-declare it and you file it in your maintenance records and you work along with it.
And what if I missed to do that?
That would be a breach of the regulation, of course, and you might encounter trouble during an inspection, or your insurance company is not happy to pay. And when it comes to the annual airworthiness review, I'm quite sure the annual airworthiness review staff would not issue a new ARC for your aircraft.
Okay, thank you. So it's not a good idea. Understood. Thank you, Yannis. Any more news that you can share with us related to the maintenance program requirements in the rules?
To develop a maintenance program, there are basically two options. Either someone would follow the instructions for continued airworthiness, or he would use the minimum inspection program.
Okay, so another stuff that needs a bit more of explanation. The minimum inspection program as opposed to the manufacturer inspection program. Can you shed a bit of light, Yannis, on the difference between the two?
Yes, with instructions for continued airworthiness, we usually mean the checklists, the instructions that the manufacturer is publishing in the aircraft maintenance manual. And the minimum inspection program is a document published by EASA in Part ML, and there are different ones for the different categories of small and light aircraft.
And I can consult Part ML and choose the appropriate minimum inspection program that applies to my category of aircraft.
Exactly.
Understood. Thank you, Yannis. We have another topic that I'd like to discuss with you. I've already addressed it, the EASA Form 1. It's costly, it's paperwork, it's not available for each and every part, potentially, that you need. And it was problematic in the past. So how does the new Part ML address this issue?
In addition to the rules for raw material and standard parts, we introduced owner-accepted parts, and for those, no EASA Form 1 is required anymore.
Okay, let's see if I understood that. You're speaking about something new that is called owner-accepted parts. No Form 1 is required when it comes to owner-accepted parts. Do you have some examples for such owner-accepted parts?
One of the best examples I can think of is the ignition lock used by a French car manufacturer, and at the same time it's used in a famous French four-seater. And this can be identified by the article number quite easily, and then the owner can accept it and release it. And another example would be a gas spring, which is used in other areas of the industry as well. And the concept of owner-accepted parts works with unapproved avionics, like the FLAM device as well.
But I'm sure there are some conditions that apply to owner-accepted parts. So which are those conditions?
Yes, owner-accepted parts are limited to parts that are not life limited, nor primary structure, nor part of the control system.
Makes sense as well. Next topic that we would like to touch upon in the new rules relate to deferred defects or defects per se. So when I want to fly with my little aeroplane and I have a little technical snag, but I consider this is not really affecting the airworthiness condition, neither the safety of that intended flight, how would the new Part ML address such a situation?
They have to quote the particular paragraph of the rule. In MLA 403, you find a couple of conditions under which the pilot or the owner is allowed to defer the correction of a defect.
So there are now clear provisions that allow me as a pilot owner to defer certain defects and nevertheless may continue operating the aircraft until the defect is being rectified.
Exactly. You as a pilot, together with the owner of the aircraft, can decide to do the repair of that defect later. And that's again something where we shift responsibility to the pilot and owner.
So that's good news. It means it doesn't automatically ground my aeroplane with every little issue.
Exactly.
Can I ask you some more stuff, Yannis? And that is about who exactly is allowed to release maintenance actions under the new Part ML?
There are three options. Maintenance tasks can be released by the pilot owner or by independent certifying staff holding a Part 66 license, or third option, by a maintenance organization.
And then it comes once a year to the airworthiness review. Who can do the airworthiness review?
The airworthiness review can be done by the competent authority, or by a KO, KMO, or along with the annual or 100-hour inspection by either a maintenance organization or even again by independent certifying staff that has been authorized by the competent authority to do so.
Understood. So again, a number of choices that are available.
Yes.
And I may pick one that suits best my individual situation.
Up to you.
Understood. Thank you all. Can I then combine, let's say, the annual 100 hours inspection with the airworthiness review?
A maintenance organization can do that, or independent certifying staff can do that, and they may agree to involve you and you act under their supervision. But yourself, you cannot do that.
Thank you for this important clarification, Yannis. I have a final question to you, which relates to the TBO intervals, the time between overhaul. Do I need to follow those TBO recommendations in all cases?
No, you don't need to follow the TBO as long as it's not listed in the airworthiness limitation section of the aircraft's maintenance manual, and it's not mandated by an airworthiness directive. So in general, a TBO is a recommendation, not a must. There are some cases where it's mandated.
That's clear. So it's a recommendation, it's not a requirement, an automatic requirement.
Unless in these exemptions, airworthiness limitation section AD, then it's a must.
Clear, okay. Well, then, Yannis, I have a final question to you, and if I may. It's somewhat related, and it's a topic that is also very often debated in aero clubs that have, say, a declared training organization, for example. So the question is whether aircraft that are used for training purposes must have all the components within TBO intervals recommended by the manufacturer or not?
There's really good news. There is no difference. TBOs are for aircraft used in a training organization, also not mandated. What is the requirement is to document in the self-declared maintenance program which TBOs you have decided not to follow. And then you remember aircraft used in a commercial training organization that have to be managed by a KMO or KO. In that case, these organizations have to document in their records the justification for not following the TBO.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Yannis. And with this, we hand back to you, John. John, over to you.
Thanks for that, Sasha. Perfect timing there from Yannis. He made it up in just at the right time, so that worked really, really well. And actually, now's quite a good time, perhaps, just to cover a few of the questions that I know people have asked on the Slido. So maybe one of the first ones from Michael Rocker, who asked how can EASA ensure that the benefits, he's talking specifically about Part M Lite here, how the benefits of things like that are actually delivered in reality and in the field, and can we expect an assessment of the reform once implemented? And actually, perhaps that's a good time to mention for those who aren't aware that actually that that's a standard part of all EASA activities and updates to regulations. So we actually have this, it's in the EASA basic regulation, this ex post evaluation process that happens as a follow-up process when we introduce new regulation that looks at did we get the benefits that we expected? How does it work in reality? And of course, as my colleagues always tell us, when they're out visiting companies and organisations, they're always obviously asking as well, how's this new change and what's that look like in reality? So hopefully that helps a little bit. There was also a question from Herman who said, he was talking about what supports safety, what makes safety more efficient, technical competency or knowledge of regulation, and that ultimately it's about doing things safely. And I think that we completely agree with that. It's not one or the other. It's you have the regulatory knowledge, and that's a key part then of our safety promotion activities, is to help people understand what's in the technical detail of the regulation, and then balance that with the practical application. And I think that's often something, and we talked about that a bit yesterday, that's missing from this sometimes from the processes. It's easy to think about what you have to do in terms of meeting a regulation and a regulatory requirement, and not taking the chance to step back and say, well, actually, how does this relate practically to what I'm trying to do, whether it's on maintenance or whatever activity it is. So hopefully that's an interesting one. We got a question from Paolo who said, could you please explain in deep the responsibility shared between the owner and the maintenance organisation and insurance? And actually it was interesting, we were just thinking, that would it's probably not something we can do in detail here with the time we have, but actually it's probably a great article we can put on the GA community. So I made a note of that, and actually we're working with two or three of the major insurers of aircraft on various other projects, so we could nicely bring in an insurance viewpoint and talk a little bit about that. So hopefully that's quite useful. And then there was a question from Per England asking, was Part M Lite applicable only to EASA certified aircraft, and does it apply to Annex 1? And Dominic, we were just talking about that, and it does only apply to EASA certified, not to Annex 1 as well. Oh, maybe Dominic can add a bit more detail.
It could be the decision of a specific member state or NAA to decide to adopt Part M Lite for some of the Annex 1 aircraft, but that would be a decision of the national authority.
And perhaps we've also got another question there, just to clarify also, when we talk about Part ML, we mean Part M Lite. We've got a few questions, just people slightly, just wanting to clarify that. So hopefully that's quite helpful in that sense. So hopefully that helps explain a bit more about Part M Lite, and I think it's been a key part of the GA roadmap that Dominique, you've been involved in the discussions. Maybe tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that just generally that we've had in that activity.
Well, I believe it's not specific to this task, but every time we want to review and put into question the existing regulation and try to adapt it to the need of GA, it's a very challenging process. We observe a lot of resistance. It's not an easy task. It takes many years. And the work which was performed by the GA task force, you met yesterday with Andreas Winkler. I suppose Andreas is online. Andreas was part of it. He had a key role in it. I mean, the team was extremely motivated to try to find solution and move the task forward. But again, as we said before, it's a question of balance. We could not achieve everything we wanted to achieve, but we achieved a lot. And you have to understand that at the end of the day, you need to reach a consensus, because it's not an EASA decision. We talk about a new law. So it means that it will be made applicable to all member states. So it means that at the end of the day, the Part M Lite has been accepted by all member states, accepted by the Commission, by the Parliament. So it's fairly heavy. So it's a result of a consensus. I believe it's a great achievement. and it's the best we could do at that time. But I believe it's a lot, and I believe you will discover it, but only after a few years. And this is why the question of Michel Roca is relevant. This ex post evaluation is important, that you can provide feedback on the implementation, but only after 2 or 3 years of experience.
And it's interesting, it follows nicely something actually Yannis and I were talking about before we started, is in terms of the challenge of, there's the initial intent that says, we want to make this regulation as simple as possible. And as I've seen in the Slido questions already, there's always an extra case and an extra case and an extra case. And well, what about, as Dominique was saying, what about this thing on the border? And literally, once you start talking to everybody, the idea of a one-paragraph regulation, part of the regulation, has kind of exploded, and it's always the balance, and we do our best, and it's a key part of the collaboration. And perhaps now's a good time to move on to the next subject, and we talk about Part 66 licenses and kind of that side of this activity. I think again, it's an interesting part of that it's another challenge that we face.
Yes, and it is. Together, Part 66 is coming together with Part M Lite, and the question of the qualification, competence, rating of the mechanic is fundamental. I'm especially interested, John, because I will retire next year, and I need to find an occupation after all these exciting years with EASA, where I was very busy. So I said, well, wait a minute, this Part 66 novelties would allow me to do the maintenance on small aircraft, because you will see later on with Guido and the next topic that you don't need to take an official training in a Part 147 organization. You can demonstrate that you have the competence, and I did a lot of maintenance on my aerobatic aircraft myself in the past, and I enjoyed it, and I would like to restart, take some on-the-job training with a mechanic, and contribute to the maintenance of my own aircraft. And the new Part 66 is giving this opportunity to the owner to work on his own aircraft, and it's great. I like it very much. So let's see what Guido can tell us about it.
And I think that indeed that's one of the challenges, isn't it? Is that we've related to many of the things we've been talking about, is that the licensing system in this case has often been considered too complex, overstructured, too many licenses, too many categories. But then obviously we then have the need to address all the different aircraft types and all the different technologies and all of these kinds of things. And we're always looking for the best solutions to try and simplify the system with the right proportionate requirements. And then obviously with the introduction of the L licenses, applicable to GA domain, and the goal obviously is to move in that direction. As we talked about, again, comes back to Michael's question there, is EASA's reviewing what happens in the past, but also now reviewing the comments received from stakeholders to the notice of proposed amendment 2020-12 on the review of Part 66. So that process of reviewing the comments on the MPA has been going on, and despite the title, the scope of that rulemaking task, so it's rulemaking task 0255, is limited to other issues, and it doesn't necessarily address the scope of the L part of the licenses. Now, the MPA corrects some of the known errors of the knowledge L modules, but the main topics, things like legacy aircraft, on-the-job training, updates of modules, and the structure of the L licenses and things like that, they're not applicable to the license to this MPA specifically. Obviously, you might expect we got an awful lot of comments, particularly from the GA community, and the colleagues were really thankful for the contributions, and EASA is now in the process of addressing those comments and involving general aviation stakeholders, and particularly our advisory committees from the GA community in another process now. So that's ongoing. So perhaps now's the ideal time to go back up to Sasha on the roof, where him and our colleague Guido will explain more about some useful information on particularly the category L2 that will become more and more popular in the GA community as it's applicable now to many sailplanes and small aeroplanes like ELA1. So if we go up to Sasha, hopefully you're there again.
Thank you, John, and welcome Guido here again from our EASA rooftop terrace and with a nice scenic view of Cologne's most important building in the back.
Hello Sasha, nice to meet you.
Guido, tell us briefly, what are you doing in EASA?
What I do is I deal mainly with the Part 66, which is the rules for maintenance licenses.
Excellent, so we can have a chat about maintenance licenses.
With my pleasure, Sasha.
For example, Guido, this is a Belco Junior, a plane that I used to fly a lot. Fantastic little aeroplane. I believe it's an ELA 1 aeroplane, is that correct?
Right. The Junior is piston engine airplanes ELA 1, so with the maximum takeoff mass below 1.2 tons. Is with metallic structures and is collected inside Group 3. And for Group 3, we have three kind of possible maintenance licenses. So we have the B12, which covers all the piston engine airplanes. Then we have the B3, covering airplanes that are below 2 tons and are not pressurized. And then the last one, but maybe more important for general aviation, is the L2, which covers ELA1 airplanes.
So the L2 license is a new one.
Right. The Lite 2 belongs to a family of Lite licenses that started to enter into service since the end of last year, because since 1st of October 2020, the certifying staff shall be qualified according to the L license that, as I said, is a family of licenses covering the new machines entering into remit of the agency. In particular, we have L1 applicable to sailplanes, we have L2 applicable to powered sailplanes, L3 for balloons, L4 and L5 for airships. And L2, other than powered sailplanes, covers also ELA1 airplanes.
So Guido, you spoke about an L2 license. I think that's an important novelty. Can you please explain a little bit about
Yes, the L2 license, L stands for Lite, belongs to a family of Lite licenses that were introduced in the rule since October 2020 in order to cover new machines entering to the remit of the agency. In particular, we have the L1 applicable for sailplanes, L2 applicable for powered sailplanes, L3 for balloons, L4 and L5 for airships. But L2 covers also ELA1 airplanes.
I understand. So, sticking again to our little Belco Junior example, fantastic little plane again, that's an L2 license that is the right one.
Right. The L2 is considered attractive for not professional people that they want to get easy license and to maintain this kind of a machine.
Excellent news. So exactly the type of guys like me. So Guido, how can I get an L2 license then?
Well, we have two ways. The first way, I would say, the royal path is when you start from scratch, so newcomer. So you have to pass examinations of basic knowledge examinations that are around 9 modules, and these modules are described in Appendix 7 of Part 66. And the good news is that you have only to pass the examination. You don't need to attend a training on these machines. So you can go to Part 147, training organization, or you can go to another organization accepted by your licensing authority that can be an aero club or other association that are authorized by the authority. This is for regarding the knowledge part. The rule requires also that you have to demonstrate experience. So you have to demonstrate at least 2 years of experience operating this kind of machines. But there is also another alleviation in the rule saying that if you can demonstrate only 1 year, at that point the authority has to introduce a limitation in your license. So you are limited. It means that you are excluded that you do maintenance on complex maintenance tasks. This is the first way.
Yeah.
The second way is once you have already got a national license, so you have got this license before October 2019, so you can go to your authority and ask them to convert your national license to EASA 1. The authority, what they will do is just keeping your privilege, so they will give you the L2 license, but inserting a limitation. Limitation will be to cover, to protect, to grandfather your privilege that you had in your national system. And
that means I don't lose anything.
Exactly. This is the principle, the rule. Don't keep the privilege, grandfathering the rights that you already got in your national system.
Okay, and this seems to be very important for for the people, not only individually but holistically, that we don't have a gap in competencies.
We don't introduce additional requirement. This is the basic principle.
Sounds very attractive and much needed. Thank you, Guido. And is there any rating requirement on top of the L2 license?
For sure. Since the rule, this license is a group rating license. It means that the experience that you can demonstrate maybe cannot cover all this kind of structure. I mean, composite, metallic, or wooden structure. So depending on what is your experience, the authority can introduce a limitation that in our jargon is exclusion. You can be excluded from in composite, in wooden structure, but important for your junior, you should not have limitation on metallic. But it's very important to remark that all these limitations can always be removed by demonstrating appropriate experience. So once you get the limitation, that you know how to remove it from your license, just doing experience, cumulate experience.
Thank you, Guido, for these explanations. Makes total sense to me. It obviously doesn't make too much sense to exclude the metallic airframe structure from the rating in my case, or sticking to the Belco Junior case, since it's in a metallic aircraft. But the main thing is that the concept has become clear. There may be exclusions which may be removed when you demonstrate having experience to your authority. Understood. Guido, allow me a last question to you, and that's more on the physical works really, when it comes to doing maintenance at the aircraft. What is exactly the type of maintenance tasks that I'm allowed to do with this L2 license?
Basically, the L2 is the privilege of L2 is to release to service or acting as a support staff on maintenance activity performed on airframe structure, power plant, electrical system, and also doing some not sophisticated job on avionics. The L2 is also allowed to maintain the emergency locator transmitter and working on transponders. And basically the typical activity is a removal installation, servicing, functional test, operational test, annual inspection, all this scheduled inspection. For sure the L2 cannot go inside the component, so in case of the engines, the L2 can remove the engine and install a new serviceable one, but cannot, let's say, enter at component level.
That's clear, makes sense as well. Thank you very much, Guido.
Welcome.
It seems to be an important novelty for the GA community in the lower leisure spectrum to have this new license as a new opportunity, a simplified way to continue maintaining our general aviation aircraft fleet.
I think this is a proportionate way to allow persons that are not professional working in the weekend for hobby on these kind of machines, so they have not to go to normal traditional heavy path B12 or B3, but following L2 path will be easy. So this is an important progressive approach of the agency on this kind of a proportionate approach of the agency for this kind of machines, light machines.
Thank you. Happy to hear that, and it's an important piece of new regulation. Thank you very much, Guido.
Thank you to you, Sasha.
And with this, I hand back to you, John. Over to you.
Thanks for that, Sasha, and hopefully you found that discussion about Part 66 licenses really useful and interesting. Obviously, so now we've been talking a little bit about maintenance itself and licenses so far, and how approval isn't always necessary. So another element we want to talk about now are the changes and repairs that are possible without the formal approval. So hopefully our colleague Boudewijn is on the line from the Netherlands. Boudewijn, are you there? Have you connected okay?
Yes, I hope I've connected
We can hear you
fairly okay. You can hear me? Good.
We can. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit for those people who...
I will introduce myself because we did that yesterday, but maybe we have different people in the audience. I'm, by the way, a little bit envious. If you compare to yesterday, I've got all the lights on. I've rearranged my living room to make it look like a studio with all lights, but it's actually raining here, and you have nice weather on your roof terrace. It's not fair, but okay. Introducing myself, I'm working for EASA since a long time. I'm a regulations officer, but most importantly, I'm the project manager of the GA roadmap. And when we did the introduction yesterday, we tried to highlight our experience in GA, and I felt a little bit left out because I only have very limited experience in general aviation, just a little bit of gliding, that's it. So I wonder, why am I feeling so at home in this activity? And actually, when I look back at my career, I've always been a kind of intermediate person between two sides, working for Fokker aircraft, between design and production. And I'm now in a kind of a intermediate position between authorities and stakeholders, and between different people in EASA. So that's probably why I feel at home in this work in the GA roadmap. But let me hand it back to you, John.
Fantastic, thanks, Boudewijn. And at least you've got better weather there in the Netherlands, hopefully, than Yanni had with his snow in Finland yesterday. So I'm also joined in the studio by our colleague Manfred. Manfred, maybe you could introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, yeah, of course. Well, my name is Manfred Reichel. I'm section manager here in the certification directorate. And my team is actually taking care about small aircraft, balloons and airships. So quite a wide range here, from glider all the way up. And we do this also for electric and hybrid aviation. I'm with EASA now 15 years, almost 15 years. And before, I have worked also 15 years in small aviation industry in the area of development, certification and flight test. So I did a lot on small airplanes, also maintenance and this kind of things. So yeah, that's my background. I have a PPL license, and actually I did even some flight testing.
So obviously we're here to talk about CSSTAN and that side of things. So can you introduce the topic a little bit and tell us a little bit about it?
Well, CSSTAN, actually it has been introduced or published the first time in 2015. And the idea of CSSTAN is to make the life of general aviation a little bit easier in respect to do changes, simple changes, but also some bigger changes, and to do some repairs. So the idea is really to allow the operators to get changes on board of the aircraft in an easier way, with less administrative burden. And for that, it's only possible because we have the regulations for maintenance in place. We have the high level of the technical skills of the companies, of the maintenance shops, and the experience. And of course, it's because especially of the qualification of the certifying staff we have in those organizations, because we can make use of them to sign off the changes, the repairs, and to go on with that, without the EASA involvement here.
Yeah, that makes sense. And maybe Boudewijn, can you tell us a bit how does that work then, changes without approval?
Yeah, okay, John. How that is organized is, first of all, and we'll talk about part 21 after this topic, the rules for airworthiness contain the processes for making changes. And first of all, we had to introduce something in that process to allow a change to be carried out without an approval. And that sounds a bit like taking a risk, but we created the process in Part 21. You can make a change without an approval, provided it is a standard change, and the same applies for a repair. So Part 21 covers the process, but it also points to you can use that process only if there is a publication from EASA that specifies how to do that standard change or standard repair. And this is where it points to what we call the CS stand, the certification specifications for standard changes and repairs. And in there we describe exactly for which type of aircraft, what kind of change you can do, what qualifications you need, and what to look out for. So it is limited to everything we cover topic-wise in CS TAN, but the route, the process was embedded in Part 21. And before you ask the question, yes, it will be again and still available in Part 21 Lite, which we discuss later. But CS TAN is where the content is, and this is also why you see quite a number of revisions of CS TAN. We try to take issues on board that are handed over to us. We get proposals to make changes, and we just try to stay in line with developments in the field and requests from there. But CS TAN is where it all takes place. Back to you, Jan.
Fantastic, thanks. And I think, Manfred, you've got a couple of slides to explain a little bit more about the background behind the changes, haven't you?
Yes, actually, let's start with some statistics on CS TAN. What you see here is the list of the issues we had so far. Bodewin mentioned it already. We are currently at NPA for the issue 4. And if you look at the standard changes, at the very first issue, we had 22 in total and 2 in the standard repairs. While for the NPA, we are now at 62 and 4 for the standard repairs. So this gives clearly a sign that we are willing, and we really try to get bits and pieces in there as much as possible and sensible. So this is the idea. And with the latest issue, the issue 4, the NPA for the issue 4, we had now also the chance to take helicopter on board, to take balloons on board. We clarified the one or the other item. We have new templates to make it easier. We clarify things on flight. We do installation check flights because there was some discussion, and we always feedback or try to get the feedback in our CS TAN, which we get from you. And if you have proposals, we try to get it in. Let's have also a look to how we see CS TAN actually. Well, because it's without us, all the process is outside. It's completely in operation area, maintenance area. We don't really see how it's used. What we see actually is that the minor changes, the application for the minor changes really dropped. So you can see it dropped from 507 back in 2014 to nowadays 147. And this is mainly because of the possibility now to install the bits and pieces using CS TAN with no need to come to us for this kind of things. And take care, or please note that it's not only minor changes. Sometimes it's even a little bit bigger. So for sailplanes, for example, in the repair, we allow to fix a broken off fuselage, which in the first go looks a little bit weird, but because the knowledge and the technology is outside there, and really the competence, it's not an issue.
Fantastic, thanks for that explanation. And maybe Bodewin, you mentioned that the standard changes are intended to help improve safety. Are there any new examples in the proposal?
Yeah, it's interesting what Manfred explained is, first of all, it helped us to reduce the hours that EASA is spending on minor issues. We should be focusing on the big issues. But at the same time, it's a nice tool to promote safety, and it nicely links actually to what we discussed earlier in our event. Vladimir Foltin talked about iconspicuity yesterday and mentioned a number of CS TAN changes that you can do, installation of ADS-B out systems combined with transponders, for instance, and using FLAM. Those topics really can help. But another one, it might be hidden, but we had a discussion yesterday about decision making with outsource control, talking about human factors. And I in particular would like to underline something which is in the latest proposal for changes to CS10 that goes into that direction. What Andreas explained in stressful situations is that the human mind becomes limited in its capabilities. And research has actually shown that a pilot, when he is focusing on his tasks, is starting to get a kind of a tunnel vision. And there are videos on the internet where you can see warnings going off, warning lights going off, and still pilots continue to fly, and they don't even notice. A trial in the US showed that actually there's one of the sensors in the human that remains the best active in all circumstances, and that is what you feel, really what they call the tactile input. If you tap someone on the shoulder, he will react. If you talk to someone, he might not react. And this is one of the issues where we've changed the new specifications for new aircraft, but the existing fleet might benefit a lot from this phenomena. So what we introduced in the new proposal is a standard change to introduce what we call a tactile warning indication system. What it basically means is you introduce a stick vibrator in your aircraft that is linked to your stall warning. So when you might be missing the stall warning horn, the vibration in the stick is something that you most likely will not miss. So this is quite a simple change, but I think for the existing fleet, it has great potential. And again, this is linked to one of the main causes of accidents, or the main accidents that we see in the pattern, where at low altitudes people stall and crash, and they don't notice that they're so close to the edge of their capabilities. So I think this one, the proposal is in the new revision for CS10, so it's out for comments right now, but this is a potential that really can help us in the existing fleet to support the pilot in stressful circumstances that, oh, damn, I feel the stick vibration and there must be something wrong. And this is really something I would encourage people to have a look at. It's a great change that is linked to a lot of the topics that we have in GA safety. I hope this is going to help the fleet out there. John, back to you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Boudewijn. And Manfred, any other thoughts from your side on the subject?
I really have to emphasize what Boudewijn is saying. CS10 really gives the chance to modernize your aircraft. If you have old steam gauges, you can install new ones. So make use of it. It for sure is good for the future, for future operation of your aircraft.
And actually, we have one question. Maybe we could just ask before you finish there. So from Raouf says, could you use it, for example, to install a new comm antenna on your aircraft?
Yes, yeah. You can install antennas. We have a specific standard change for antennas. This is the one you can use. I have to make a little bit a but here, because I don't know whether you're talking about an aircraft with a pressurized cabin or not, because if you install something on a pressurized cabin, then it's a different issue. So currently it's purely possible for aircraft in non-pressurized areas.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that reply. And
welcome.
Yeah, thanks very much to Manfred and Boudewijn for that interesting session there. Thanks very much. So now we're going to move on to the next topic, and we're going to talk about the subject of Part 21 Lite. Again, something that a really important topic, and we're joined now by another colleague on stage. We have Boudewijn. I can pronounce it properly. Get stuck in my own mouth there. Sorry about that. So we're joined again by Boudewijn from the Netherlands. So he's already introduced himself. Perhaps first I could introduce our colleague here in the studio, Carl. Maybe you can say a few words, Carl?
Good morning. Thank you for that introduction, John. I'm Carl Garvey. I work in the Certification Directorate as the Rulemaking Officer, and I'm responsible for Part 21 Lite and the implementation of that.
Fantastic, thanks. And also on the lines we now have Kyle Martin from Gamma. Kyle, hopefully you can hear us all right there.
Loud and clear, John.
Can you introduce yourself quickly to our audience?
Sure. My name's Kyle Martin. I am the Vice President of European Affairs at the General Aviation Manufacturers Association, ordinarily based in Brussels, but today coming to you from Spain.
Fantastic. I think it's great that you're coming from Spain now. We were up almost as far north as we could go, up in Bodo yesterday, and now we've gone full south, so that's fantastic. And I just correct myself, so it's not Dominique, it's not Boudewijn that's doing this session, it's going to be Dominique. So maybe Dominique, can you explain a little bit first between you and Carl about Part 21 Lite for our audience and what it's all about?
Well, first of all, if you want to complain later on against Part 21, the guilty people are all here. Huh? It's Carl, it's me, it's Boudewijn. Huh? So basically, if you have something to say, you know where to go.
The Slido's open.
Exactly. Now, I believe it, Part 21 Lite, you see that we are going light everywhere. Huh? We are Part 66, Part M Lite, now Part 21 Lite. It was really the last pillar of the big changes that we wanted to bring to our regulatory framework. It's a big one. Part 21 is a high-level regulation. Huh? When internally at EASA, we come to the boss and say, okay, we would like to change Part 21, immediately you see all the signals going to red. Huh? So, oh, what do you want to do with Part 21? It's really a very important regulation. And when on top of that, you go to the boss and say, well, we want to do a big change to Part 21. Have a completely different approach, something totally new that we've never done for GA. You can imagine the reaction. Say, okay, wait a minute, give me some explanation. And you will see, and Carl will give you the detail of what we are doing. We are very close to release what we call the opinion. So the text that we propose will be released and public soon at the stage of this opinion. And you will have all detailed information. I believe we have tried to involve the stakeholders through what we call a focus consultation process. So you were invited to 4 workshops in order to exchange with us on the key principle of this totally new approach. Honestly, for me, what we are doing with Part 21 Lite for design and production, certification, or other mean to accept new product, it's a revolution. It's a revolution. We have never gone so far that what we are going to do with Part 21. So listen carefully. I give the floor to Carl, and let's talk about it.
I'm not quite sure how I can follow an introduction like that, but I will try. I've got a quick slide here. If we can just show it, the first slide, I'll try and give you an overview of Part 21 Lite. It's widely recognized that Part 21, the one-size-fits-all, doesn't work for GA. And we've tried in the past to try and adapt Part 21 to more of a GA focus, but unfortunately, because of the restrictions and the basic regulation, it didn't permit that. With the new basic regulation, we now have the regulatory tools that we need in order to provide that flexibility for general aviation. And that's why we developed this bespoke Part 21 Lite, which has been built specifically for general aviation as a completely different document to Part 21, so standing alongside it. And we think that it now actually provides that proportionality that's actually needed. The Part 21 Lite allows 3 different possibilities for the aircraft manufacturer. He has the possibility to either follow the current Part 21 process, if that's what he chooses to elect to do. If he's familiar with that and he's been using that in the past, he may decide to continue to do that. However, he has the possibility now under Part 21 Lite to follow a more streamlined and more GA-focused route to a type certificate. It's worth mentioning that that type certificate has the same weight and value as a normal type certificate, which is quite important for the applicant. Alternatively, he has the possibility to also then go to a fully self-declared process where the manufacturer takes sole responsibility for that design and makes a declaration that the aircraft complies with the relevant technical specifications. So what we think we're doing with what we believe we're doing with this Part 21 Lite is introducing steps within the regulatory structure. So the entry level would be the declarative process, and then the next step up then would be the Part 21 Lite process, and then they could step into the full Part 21 domain.
We're having a problem with the slides. Ooh, can we just... Sorry, we're just having a small technical issue with the buttons here a second, so we'll resolve those. Maybe, Carl, maybe I know Budavine was quite happy to jump in here with a couple of thoughts of his own on Part 21 Lite while we just resolve our little technical problem, perhaps. Budavine, can we connect to Budavine in the Netherlands and perhaps get some thoughts from him?
I think you can. I'm
Fantastic,
available.
there you are.
Okay. Well, what I maybe want to underline in this process, and it's because people wonder, okay, you're making a real big change to Part 21. You're introducing a Part 21 Lite. Where's the proposal? Where's the notice of proposed amendment? And where can we read everything? What are you doing? Actually, we chose, because this is such a fundamental and such a big change, it would be likely that we would get it wrong from the start. So instead of putting everything on paper, we've been working with all the stakeholders to slowly build this new concept. We organized up to 4 workshops where we initially started with a very sketchy idea, got good feedback, changed our direction due to the feedback that we received, and it's really a good, it showed to be a good tool to discuss with people what are we missing, what are the issues, and how can we make it work. I'd suggest, John, that you also switch to Carl, because I think from the manufacturer's side, who are mostly impacted by this change, they really had some good questions on what it should or what it could mean for them. So maybe that helps if Carl can give his input. He's been very helpful during the workshops already, but I think that's part of the entire development of this rule.
Perfect. Thanks for that update. So, and your view on that, Budavine. Hopefully, we might be able to call the slide up now. So we're jumping into the dark a little bit here. Hopefully it's the slide we're expecting. But if we can maybe try and put it up and we see if it's the one we're expecting. Carl's hopefully pressing his button here, and we're seeing if we've got the right thing. Oh.
Okay.
Oh no. Okay, so we can't make that work. So, no, Michael, do you want to? Is there a little bit more for you to explain, or should we jump straight?
No,
to
no. Just if I may just quickly point out that the declarative process is the big innovation that we're going to introduce into Part 21, and the outcome from that will be a declaration which is registered on the EASA website made by the manufacturer, and that would enable the competent authority then to issue a restricted certificate of airworthiness, which is different from the certified process, which results in a normal certificate of airworthiness. So there's 3 possibilities for the manufacturer now: using the normal Part 21 process, Part 21 Lite certified, which results in a type certificate, or using the declared process, which results in a declaration which is registered by EASA and then results in a restricted certificate of airworthiness at the end.
Okay, well, I think that, despite not having the slide, I think that explained it really, really well. So, hopefully that's clear for the audience, and perhaps now's the time to go to Kyle, who has some questions to put from the industry side to Dominique and Carl. This caused all sorts of confusions during the rehearsal. Having a Carl and a Kyle is just about the most complicated thing we could have done. But Kyle, if we can go to you.
Thank you, John. Just a first question for Carl. Obviously, as we've been following this process as Gamma, this is very important for us and the whole GA manufacturing community in Europe. Who do you foresee will be able to benefit from the new Part 21 Lite regulation when it's available?
Thank you, Carl. That's a very useful question. We've determined the scope of Part 21 Lite based upon a risk assessment, and we've taken lessons learned from the ELA 1 and ELA 2 introduction previously, and we've developed the scope of Part 21 Lite into two different groups. So for the Lite declared scope, there's a more limited scope because of the less involvement of EASA in that process. And looking at aircraft typically with an occupancy of 2, for balloons it would be 4, and with some maximum takeoff mass limitations within there. Now, the good news is for the Lite certified, because of greater involvement of EASA in the process and in the verification of the design, we can offer a larger scope for the Lite certified process, with aircraft typically up to the maximum takeoff mass of 2,000 kilograms with 4 occupants. Also, because of the benefits and the feedback we've received from the workshops that we held, we've also offered the possibility for Part 21 Lite to be used for existing type certificate holders or supplemental type certificate holders, and to use the benefits from Part 21 Lite for designs and repairs to those aircraft as well. So we really feel that there's a lot to offer within Part 21 Lite to the GA community, and we've maximised that as much as we can based upon the risk assessment that was conducted. Any further questions, Kyle?
Sure. Thanks for that, Carl. That really helps. And obviously, as Dominique said yesterday, I think there's nothing general about general aviation, so it's good to try and embrace that whole spectrum of different categories and risk levels. Just a follow-up, though, because I think as EASA put in their EPAS, and I know Gamma's been saying for many years, GA is really the cradle of innovation for the whole aviation sector. My members in the whole GA industry is rapidly developing new technologies from hybrid propulsion, electric propulsion, hydrogen aircraft, new avionics, etc. How can new and novel technologies take advantage of the new Part 21 Lite proposal?
Thank you, Carl. That's a really useful question. As I mentioned, we have to balance the involvement of EASA with the permitted scope of novelty and innovation. So for the declared process, unfortunately, there's less opportunities for novel and innovative designs because of that reduced involvement of EASA. However, for the Lite certified process, thanks to the verification of EASA in the certification process, we can offer much more possibilities for innovation and these new technologies that you mentioned that are coming in the pipeline. And we do see that as being a real benefit for the applicant and the future type certificate holder, that they can come to Part 21 Lite and still consider something which hasn't been introduced in the past in a design. We have the possibility to introduce special conditions and develop those bespoke certification requirements for those when defining the certification basis. Unfortunately, with the declared process, hopefully we can evolve our the technology that we can include within the declared process, but that's going to evolve over time as we become more and more comfortable with that process.
And I think maybe Boudewijn has something just to follow up as a comment there. So maybe if we can just go to Boudewijn for a second to follow up.
Yeah, thank you, John. Really looking at what Carl just explained about the declared or the certified process. What is important to understand is if we, and what we want to do with the declared process is that the person who takes responsibility declares against a technology that is known. And that's why for innovation, our declared system initially is quite limited, because you cannot declare that I will do something completely new and it is safe. We'd like to first get some experience and get it documented how to make sure that you're safe, and then you can declare that, of course, I follow these lines because I want to make a safe design. But so declared is against known standards, and this is what limits it a bit in when you talk about innovation. But there is a little bit of a gray area that Carl explained, but the fundamental idea is you declare against something and we know what you are declaring to. If there's nothing in place, how can you make a declaration? Back to you, John.
Thanks, Dominique, and thanks, Boudewijn. And Dominique's just got something else to add here.
Yes, I believe it's an important topic that Kyle is bringing here for discussion, innovation. By the way, I'm leading a department, the name is Policy, Innovation and Knowledge. So innovation is my business as well today. And innovation is of course a hot topic in our agenda today because we have many projects reaching us proposing spectacular innovation. And it's nice, we like it very much. And here with Part 21, Part 21 is a regulation addressing design and production issue. But when we talk about innovation, I can take a case that I know very well because I was personally involved as head of department at that time and also as pilot for the flight verification. I will take the example of the Pipistrel Electro, the first electrical aircraft to be certified in the world. Well, we had to address innovation in this case. Electrical motor, battery management system, a way to fly the aircraft, to control the power, totally new, totally different. And what we found very quickly, because this is the first thing that we discussed before the official application by Pipistrel, was, wait a minute, it's not only about certifying your product that you can certify and build. You want to fly it. So what will be the impact of this innovation on pilot licensing, on air operation? Are we sure that the current regulations are fit for purpose, are really permitting the operation of this innovative aircraft? What about aerodromes and so on? And then we discover that very often innovation is impacting more than a certification process or certification requirement or production requirement. This is why our involvement is needed, because we need to work with you if you come with an innovative project to ensure that at the end of the day, when the aircraft is certified, you can also operate the aircraft. So that's why innovation needs special care and attention.
Thanks for that, Dominique. I think it's been a really good discussion here. And I think, Kyle, maybe do you have a follow-up question for Carl and Dominique?
So just to follow, certainly. Thank you, Dominique and Carl, for that. One area that we all know about is that the G aircraft in Europe are not all, unfortunately, modern, shiny new Pipistrels. There's a lot of older aircraft out there, but we want to encourage those owners, operators of those aircraft to upgrade to new safety enhancing systems, avionics, angle of attack indicators, and so on. Can Part 21 Lite be used for design changes or STCs to existing or older certified aircraft?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and thank you for that question. Initially, when we developed the initial concept of Part 21 Lite, we considered that it would only be standalone and for new applications. And we thought that would be the easiest approach to use. However, feedback we received from various consultation workshops was that actually some of the real benefits could be for existing type certificate holders to use the Part 21 Lite and benefit from the streamlined processes and the alternatives to approvals. And so we listened to that, and we've adapted our current draft regulation to incorporate that permeability between Part 21 and Part 21 Lite and allow that transition for a limited period and allow the TC holder to transition or migrate to the Part 21 Lite domain. So now hopefully we'll benefit from a much more streamlined process for design changes and also for repairs as well.
Fantastic. I think, in fact, interestingly, we had a question from Egbert on exactly that point before you said it. So it's like, you preempted immediately, actually, one of the questions we had on Slido. So hopefully that answered the question that came through on that side as well. So thanks for that. Kyle, is there anything else from your side there in Spain you'd like to add?
Many things I could talk about this subject all day, but in the interest of time, just one final question, because as associations and manufacturers are always impatient. When will the rule be available, and when can manufacturers and design organizations start benefiting from it?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Here at EASA, we're very passionate about Part 21 Lite. We want to get it out of the door as soon as possible. However, we want it to be right and fit for purpose and be ready for the use by the GA community. As Dominique mentioned, we're using the accelerated procedure, so there's no NPA for Notice of Proposed Amendment for this regulatory change, and we've been using focused consultation workshops. With that in mind, we still have the final step of consulting our draft proposal with our advisory bodies and getting feedback from those advisory bodies, which is the next step and hopefully will take place next month. And once that's been finalised and we've closed all the comments, we're aiming to publish an EASA opinion in the second quarter of this year. After the opinion has been published, that transfers to the European Commission for their comitology process, and we have less influence on the timescales for that process, although we're hoping to have something in 2022.
Oh, maybe we go to Dominique just to add something on this one.
Yes, maybe we forgot to mention something which is related to a comment that we got yesterday concerning Annex 1 aircraft, and we said no, this webinar is open to all. I mean, we do not want to create a borderline between EASA or non-EASA aircraft. With the Part 21 Lite, what we wanted to do also is to facilitate the transition between Annex 1 and EASA system. Most of the project I was involved into for certification of small two-seat that we had recently, LSA, using the CS LSA mainly or CS VLA. In most of the cases, these aircraft were already flying under Annex 1 condition. And for business reason, the manufacturer decided that, well, it's worth the effort to try to go a step above and try to get an EASA approval in order to enter into the EASA system. And we have a good example of companies which started with very simple design, with Annex 1 activities, then got their first very simple two-seat aircraft certificated by EASA, and now are into a business where they are producing twin engine. And I believe we help them to grow and get the capacity to develop their business. And what we want to do with Part 21 Lite is to facilitate this transition, to reduce the height of the step. Today it was like a wall to enter into the EASA system, far too complicated for many small companies. And with the new system, we hope that we will get more companies, more initiatives, more new products that could enter into this system and help the company to grow their business.
Yeah, and I think having, this isn't my area of specialisation, but having seen the discussions over the last 2-3 years, that's the thing that always struck me, is that lowering the barrier of entry into the EASA system, and that we don't get this kind of Annex 1 EASA system kind of approach. We start to blur that all together a little bit more. And I think certainly for me as somebody outside the direct work, it feels like that's a really positive step to me. Maybe Kyle, we come to you if there's any last comments or thoughts from your side before we start thinking about finishing this section.
Can I ask a question to Kyle?
Yes. Dominique, maybe Dominique can ask you a question, Kyle.
Yes, Kyle, because you know that Gamma is of course involved in FAA business as well. And maybe you can say a word between the FAA approach to the problem and our approach, because we are working on the Part 21 Lite and they are working on the so-called mosaic process. And do you know exactly where are the differences between the two approaches? It could be of interest for our audience.
It's not my area of expertise, Dominic. My US colleagues are working on the mosaic process along with various other GA associations and the FAA. I believe the approaches are somewhat similar, trying to bridge those gaps between what's Annex 1 in Europe into the EASA certified process, and in the US, more of the light sports aircraft up into the FAA process. I think there's a lot we should be doing in trying to find harmonization, because ultimately, whether an aircraft is certified with Part 21 Lite in Europe, or whether it's certified with Mosaic or its consequences in the US, we want to encourage products to be delivered in both directions. So we want European GA aircraft to be sold in the US and vice versa. So I think it's really important that we work on a harmonized approach and mutual recognition on both sides. I think, I don't know if Carl mentioned it, but I think it's understood that the declared process of Part 21 Lite will not enable exports outside of the EU, but certainly the certified process will. So I think having a harmonized approach between both the EASA and FAA systems is very important.
Thanks for that, Kyle. And perhaps, are there any more thoughts from your side on the subject in general?
No, just that Gamma is here to support this project, and we'll be working continuously with Dominique Boudwijn and his team to try and help bring this new Part 21 Lite to reality, and hopefully it won't take quite as long as Part M Lite, we only hope. But I think we'll help try and accelerate that process as much as we can.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Carl, for your input. And maybe if we could just quickly go to Boudwijn. I know you've got some additional thoughts to add on this from your side.
Yeah, thank you, John. I think it's important to give a kind of a caution. Just sharing some recent information. We've been discussing the proposal for Part 21 Lite with our legal department, and it was very interesting to see that if you look at the legal text of a rule, the concept might not be as crispy clear as you would like it to be. We had to explain to our lawyers exactly what it meant. You can read a rule, but it doesn't really highlight the fundamental ideas behind it. And this is a caution that I would like to give to everybody, which also is actually applicable to the discussions we might have on a Part M Lite. Regulations are not really the best way to convey a message on the principles. I think the interview with Jannes on Part ML was far more enlightening than trying to read the rules. The same will be applicable to Part 21 Lite. If you start to read the document, you might wonder what are they trying to do, and that's why we probably have to provide a lot of explanation just through WebExes like this to explain what the ideas are behind this in order to make it clear. Reading the rules will be a challenge, and I wish you all good luck. I'm a rulemaking officer. I should apologize for this difficulty, but good luck. I think there's a very good concept behind the rule, which might not be as clearly visible when you read it. But if you have questions, please come back to us.
Yeah, thanks for that, Boudwijn. I think that really reinforces what we've been talking about throughout the last 2 days, which is, it's one thing to have the rules and the regulatory framework in place, but that's why, from the start, the start of the original GA roadmap, but particularly the second part of the GA roadmap that kind of followed from the conference we had in Vienna, is really all centered around the communication aspects. And I think, Dominique, you summed that up really, really nicely yesterday, is that, if we don't provide that supporting material, following on from what Boudwijn also was saying there, is you can read the rules, but it's the support we give to you, having events like this where our colleagues can explain things in perhaps a more practical way, being able to read more and find the information you need to kind of make sense of the rules. And that's where particularly I keep coming back to the GA community and kind of, that's an ideal place we'll continue to add more and more resources to make this more and more useful and practical for you as a community. And that kind of fits quite nicely on the different subjects that we've been talking about. Maybe Dominique, on the subject of Part 21 Lite, any last thoughts from you before we look at any other questions?
I realized that I forgot when I was mentioning Carl and Boudwijn, because we were teaming up together a lot to brainstorm and to react to the many comments we receive internally already and through the workshop. I forgot to give also credit to Michael Gerhardt, who was the section manager of of Carl at that time until end of last year. And Michael is now moved to our strategic department. He did a tremendous job. He has a background of lawyer, and it was very helpful for us because we were coming with the ideas, the concept, and of course you need to translate that into rules that will be finally accepted first by our legal department, as mentioned by Boudewijn, and also by the legal department of the Commission. It's a big challenge. We are not really talking with the same words. It's a different culture. And it's a big difficulty. You cannot imagine the number of hours that Carl has spent reviewing, discussing comment, answering comments with us. It's a tremendous task, but it's worth the effort. And to answer to Kyle concerning the fact that we should try to be quicker with the legislative process than we were for the part-time Lite, yes, we have to do it before mid-2022, because for me it will be the achievement of my career, because this is when I will leave EASA. So we have a good reason to be on time.
Fantastic, thanks, and particularly thanks to Carl for your insight and your expertise on this subject, and also thanks to Kyle for calling in from Spain to have some questions to our EASA experts on this topic, and it was great to have that interaction. So perhaps now, Carl, because of our logistics things, if I could ask you to jump off the stage, not having to jump off the roof at least, up to the roof as we were talking about earlier. And Yannis, maybe you could come back on. So we've got a couple more questions related to Part-M Lite that we can perhaps cover just in the last few minutes that we've got, and then we can kind of look towards the end of the session. And it's interesting, there are quite a few comments from Magni, from Herman, also from Egbert, kind of following on from what you were saying about the cost of maintenance. And there were a couple of the questions that we're talking about, oh, well, you know, we need to find more about the root cause. And I know a lot of that works, you know, that's the work that took a lot of the time, you know, understanding what were the things we needed to do. And I think, you know, maybe Dominique, you can talk a little bit maybe about, you know, there was a lot of work, wasn't there, in understanding what were the challenges to try and make maintenance cheaper for the GA community?
Yes, and make maintenance cheaper is not only a factor related to the bringing new, better regulation, you know. We have a way of working in Europe. There is a tradition, a culture, and you will not change it like that. And so I believe we will have to learn all together how to get the best of these new rules, of the new regulation. We published a Sunny Swift stories about that, explaining the case of a guy, new owner of an aircraft. I don't remember if it was a Cessna. No, it was not a Cessna. It was an Italian aircraft. And asking Sunny about what should I do? Should I still continue to work with a camo, or should I try to review, prepare, and accept myself the maintenance program? That is a good question. And the answer in Sunny Swift is, well, if you feel that you are competent, if you feel comfortable to make the review every year of the ADs, of the service bulletin of the OEM, to assess the condition of your aircraft. If you feel that you are competent to do it, yes, do it. If you have a doubt, don't do it. Go to a specialist, go to a maintenance shop, go to a KO. And on the other side, for the camo now, the KO, the small organization, or the mechanics have also to learn how to work with a new system. I had a discussion with the mechanic taking care of my aircraft. I can tell you, he's very uncomfortable with the new system. It's totally new. And I can feel that if it is not resistance to the change, it's at least that, oh, we are moving in a new area. It's not as it was before. He's asking a lot of questions. So it's normal. It's normal. We have to learn. And so it is only after, as I mentioned before, 2 or 3 years that we will start to have a better visibility on the effect of this significant change in our system. but it will require the effort of everybody. Of course, the maintenance community, and also, of course, the pilot owners, Aero Club. And a close cooperation, communication between you, operators association, and your National Aviation Authority. And we have seen with Clément that, at least in France, and I'm sure it is the same everywhere, there is very good support from the National Aviation Authority. And EASA, we want to stay in the loop, for, of course, and continue to support the implementation. And ultimately, I'm quite sure that this will have a positive impact on the maintenance cost.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Dominique, and huge thanks also to Yannis for having run up and down from the roof and for all your inputs as well. Also, huge thanks to Manfred, again to Carl and Kyle, and particularly also to Boudewijn calling in also from the Netherlands. Thank you to you all as our audience. We hope this has been really useful and interesting. As we said, all of the sessions will be put online very shortly on the EASA event page. And also we'll be breaking the different topics up and putting those in more detail on the EASA community site. So hopefully you found this last day and a half interesting and useful. Thanks for joining us. As I say, we'll also be answering the Slido questions afterwards and putting those online. Thank you very much. Fly safe, have a fantastic summer, and hopefully things will really start improving soon. Thank you. Good night.